The legacy of the original Shaq Fu is one that's a bit infamous, whether it's from websites destroying all known copies, or just the game itself and the oddball nature of it even existing. I was a kid though that loved Shaq. I saw Kazam, I saw Steel, and even owned some of his CDs. And all these years later, we now have Shaq Fu The Legend Reborn for PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and PC. But is Shaq Fu The Legend Reborn a true legendary beat-em-up title? Or should this phoenix just turn back to ashes? Let's start off by saying, as a Shaq Fu fan, I was unfortunately disappointed by the fact that the game is not a sequel to the original Shaq Fu. I'm not really surprised they've distanced themselves from that title, but of course, a lot of the reason people are going to be checking out this game is the fact that that original game even exists. However though, what you end up getting is a single-player beat-em-up that's very self-aware, humorous, over the top beyond belief, and is very enjoyable for about the hour and a half to 2 hours that it lasts. The story included here is relatively minimum, it doesn't really get in the way, and does add a bit of the humor to the over-the-top nature that this game already has going for it. In the game you're playing as Shaq, who in this universe was born and raised in China, or at least was a baby in China, growing up being an outcast because of being different, and then being taught martial arts by an ancient martial arts master. Now all of a sudden, his village is being attacked by enemies, and soon Shaq sets off to defeat all these enemies, find out what the evil truly is, and eventually also find the origins of his birth. The story, like I said, gets the job done. It's over the top, self-aware, but at least is humorous at times to keep things going. The actual gameplay, though, of course, is going to be the big draw, and for a single-player beat-em-up, it's quite enjoyable because the action is always frantic. There's always a lot of enemies coming towards you, and it's very easy to pull off some cool combos. The game has a very cinematic approach, similar to the classic Battletoads. When you're pulling off a punch combination, all of a sudden Shaq will turn his fist giant or shoe giant and knock an enemy towards the screen, or grab a hold of a random enemy and do a big body slam. These moves make every encounter at least feel satisfying when you pull off one of these big moves and do a giant uppercut, knocking an enemy flying up into the sky. There is a bit more to the combat though than just mashing the button. You do have a kind of a shield break that you can really use to combo a lot of enemies, as well as special moves that you have to pull off using a meter that fills when you defeat enemies. One of the coolest parts about the game, though, is the transformations, and Shaq has 2 of these that he randomly gets at key points during the game. These are kind of forced on you, and for the most part are the same every segment you get to use them, which is a bit disappointing. I wish there were more of these abilities, or you end up getting them random instead of the forced areas of the story. However, the abilities, the robot, which is similar to Michael Jackson's from Moonwalker, as well as you also have a cactus one. You turn into a giant cactus and spray needles everywhere like a giant raging cactar. The game's levels are broken up into several checkpoints, and you can in fact start from any of those checkpoints once you end up making it to one. So even if you end up quitting out of the game and come back later, you can start off at whatever checkpoint you ended up leaving off last. Also though, the game only has 6 stages, unfortunately, and there's only a couple of themes for these levels. In fact, a couple of the stages are redone, just slightly modified, like at night, or slightly destroyed. The game does have 3 difficulties for you to take on, but unfortunately with no multiplayer and lack of other modes, there isn't really a whole lot extra. There is the Shakopedia to look at enemy information and items and such, but really that's all there ends up being. From the technical side of things, I'm happy to report the game never crashed on me, and even with all the enemies on screen, the game never slowed down once. Shaq Fu The Legend Reborn is available now for $19.99 on the PS4. Unfortunately though, it does not have a Platinum trophy, though the trophies that are included are very easy to get. Shaq Fu The Legend Reborn is also available on PC, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Overall, Shaq Fu Legend Reborn is a decent single-player beat-em-up game. It may be a bit overpriced for some, so you may want to wait for it to go down a little bit, but if their goal was to make fans of the original Shaq Fu or just fans of Shaq happy in general, they definitely did that here. I love stuff like the Icy Hot being the health replenishment. I just wish there was an inclusion of maybe the general car insurance being also thrown in. Might as well throw in every Shaq endorsement ever. With all that said though, I'm going to be giving the game a 7 out of 10. And with that, it's going to wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.